Lady Freethinker believes in a world where all animals are respected and protected. A world where dogs are no longer held prisoner and killed by the meat trade. A world where animals are no longer exploited for deadly sports. A world where all species are treated with kindness and compassion. Together with Lady Freethinker, you are helping create this world. As president of Lady Freethinker, I am so grateful for people like you who speak up for all animals. Over the years, one of our most successful campaigns has been the fight against the dog meat trade. Not only are we running bus ads in South Korea and gathering petition signatures to help end this unimaginable cruelty, but Lady Freethinker is also assisting on-the-ground efforts to help the helpless. Thanks to your support, we're able to aid the rescue of dogs and cats from the harsh streets of China. And because of you, dozens of beautiful, loving dogs were rescued from the Yulin Dog Meat Festival, finally enjoying the kindness and love they deserve. And thanks to activists around the world, real progress is happening. More and more people are shunning the dog meat trade, and major dog slaughterhouses in Korea are closing their doors for good. Also, Freethinker launched its first independent investigation. With a brave undercover investigator, we obtained footage that captured the nation's attention. The shocking story of dogs exploited for dogfighting was broadcast on Chilean national news and resulted in the rescue of 21 dogs from a cruel and deadly future. Police raided the complex and brought charges of animal cruelty against the defendants. And little Sabino, who was found at the end of a heavy chain without food, water, or shelter, is now safe with his forever family. Your support made this tremendous win for animals in Chile a reality. One of Lady Freethinker's greatest strengths is our ability to mobilize large numbers of people to take action. More than 300 petitions have been launched to help stop animal cruelty. We've gathered more than 12 million signatures from people like you, people who care about animals. We've written more than 2,000 articles to tell the stories of animals in need. And tens of millions of people have been educated on the issues animals face around the world. All of this attention shows that people care about the lives of animals of all species, that people all around the world are making the choice to create a kinder, more peaceful, and more compassionate world.
Today's podcast features a powerhouse animal rights activist and journalist, Nina Jackel, founder of Lady Freethinker, a 501c U.S. charity known for effecting change for animals around the world. Lady Freethinker aims to expose cruel and illegal activities through undercover operations, targeted education to change outdated cultural norms, and galvanizing ordinary citizens to make a difference through strategic petition campaigns targeted at government officials, industry leaders, and other decision makers. Their petitions have garnered over 15 million signatures and have managed to directly save countless animals' lives. Nina started Lady Freethinker back in 2013 as a personal blog and maintained it while working as campaign director for Last Chance for Animals, an animal advocacy group based in Los Angeles. The impact of her work was almost immediately felt. A petition Jackel started to stop a school hunting contest in which children as young as 5 years old were rewarded for killing possums resulted in public outrage that shut down the event in 2017. When I read that, I was like, oh my God, for school children of all people.
It was shocking.
It was shocking. So you did amazing work on that. In recent years, Lady Freethinker has gone beyond publishing by providing direct aid to dogs and cats rescued from the horrors of the meat trade in Asia and sponsoring educational ads for the public in dog meat trade nations that show how dogs are family and not food. Today, Jackel leads a team of dedicated writers and investigators at Lady Freethinker, covering breaking news and grassroots actions with the mission of creating a more compassionate world. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Nina.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's like a bit of a dream come true for me because I've been following your work for ever since I became an animal rights activist a few years ago. And, I'm so thrilled to be able to speak with you today. And we have so much stuff to cover. But before we get into all the details of your work and your journey and all that, I always like to have a little bit of an idea of the background of our guests. And I'm always curious, like, what made you become an animal rights activist and get involved with animal rights? And so if you wouldn't mind telling us, where were you born and raised? And, what was it like growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you very much for having me on the podcast. I love what you're doing. And I feel very fortunate to join other amazing people that I've seen you interview. So thank you.
Right,
And
thank you.
yeah, so I was born in New York, and my family lived in the Bronx until I was about 10 years old. Um, and then we moved to Southern California, to Riverside, actually.
Okay.
And during that time, we got a dog, a little mutt that we adopted, and her name was Peggy. And she just became the joy of my life, starting at, age 11, really. And then I remember one day when I was 12, I was sitting with Peggy on the landing of our apartments and just petting her. And I just, started looking into her eyes, and I just saw so much soul and intelligence and, the same qualities that I would see in a human if I looked in their eyes. And I just, thought how much it would hurt me, to see pain in those eyes and to see Peggy harmed. And, for some reason at that point, I guess at 12, you're sort of starting to think more for yourself and question things. I had this, realization that, animals do feel pain and they have these feelings, and I didn't want to hurt them. And so, just as much as I cared about Peggy and her feelings, I, started thinking about the feelings of other sentient beings. And that was when I stopped eating meat. I became a vegetarian at 12.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and it was easier than you think, because I love to cook and I didn't really like my mom's cooking that much. So it was
Oh
actually
my God. You didn't tell her that, I hope.
yeah, well, no, she probably had an idea. That's okay. She knows she's skilled at a great many things, and she knows that cooking
But
is not
cooking
one
is
of them.
not one of them.
So
Okay.
that's fine. But it gave me, an opportunity to explore new foods, and I found that I liked a lot of, a lot of veggie foods anyway. And yeah, that was kind of the beginning of, the journey into activism. I wouldn't call myself an activist at that point. I
Yeah.
just didn't really know a lot about it.
Yeah.
And I do remember learning about animal testing, and that really affected me. I remember seeing PETA ads of, maybe Britches or one of those monkeys that, had those horrible experiments done. And those kind of
Horrible.
stuck with me. Yeah. But at that point, I just didn't really know anything about being an animal activist. And then, fast forward to college, I got a philosophy degree and ended up writing as a career, writing as a journalist, and kind of trying to write about animal issues when I could. I wrote a lot of health articles, and so I would, kind of gently push plant
Yeah.
products, and and it's easy to do because meat is very unhealthy for most
Exactly.
people.
Exactly.
Um, it would kind of fit in. But then I got a writing gig at an organization called Last Chance for Animals, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
Um, and at that point, I kind of had the doors flung open, as far as finally seeing the world of animal activism in a way that I hadn't before. And I was seeing these undercover investigations, not just from them, but from all the other organizations that, I started to follow, like Mercy for Animals and
Yeah.
Animal Equality, and, even the PETA and Humane Society investigations that I just hadn't really been exposed to yet. And it just opened up this kind of world of opportunity. And before I'd started at Last Chance for Animals, I'd actually started a little blog called Lady Freethinker, and that was just kind of a space for me to write about the thing.
We're moving too fast.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. That's one of the next
you're
questions.
doing such a good job, though. Like, I feel like I don't even need to be here.
No, okay, all right.
No, but thank you so much.
I'll shush it. Yeah.
That's super interesting that you became vegetarian at age 12. I always find that surprising. I became vegan at age 15, but that was really because of my friend. You know, honestly, on my own, I would have never thought about it. And that's often the case. I always say to my vegan friends, remember when you were not vegan, because sometimes they're a little bit abrasive in the way they approach other people.
Yes.
And I'm like, no, they haven't had that awakening yet. They haven't seen what you've seen. And, you know, some people, it takes them longer, you know, so you have to be understanding. But I'm a little bit curious, how did your family react to you becoming vegetarian overnight?
Yeah, they were surprisingly kind of unsurprised, surprisingly unsurprised. They, you know, they just kind of accepted it. Okay. They're pretty liberal, open-minded people. You know, my father is a playwright. My mother is artistic also. So they're pretty open-minded in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helped a lot. You know, it wasn't this sort of staunch, like, this is what you're going to eat.
Conservative banker.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was thankfully an easy thing to do at that age.
And do you have a lot of siblings, or?
I have one sister, yeah, and a few years later, she stopped eating meat too. So she's still
because of you, I guess she.
I probably influenced her, but I think she really came to her own decisions eventually.
Is she older or younger?
She's a year and a half older.
Okay. Oh, that's still cool. So she, as a teenager, she became vegetarian as well.
I think it was right around college for her. It was, I think it was after she moved.
Okay. It took her a little longer, but still, it's all good. So we already covered that, you know, you did work for Last Chance for Animals, but I would like us to talk a little bit more about the kind of work that you were doing for them. And how did it come about? Like, did you apply, or did you know someone that knew you, or were you recruited? How did that work out?
Well, oddly enough, I answered a Craigslist ad for a freelance writer. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I was freelancing, looking for writing gigs, and to me, it was kind of a dream come true to be writing for an animal rights organization. Yeah. Even though at that time I was really kind of ignorant about what an animal rights organization does. I knew that I loved animals and I wanted to help them with my writing. And yeah, that's really it. I got hired as a writer, and I worked my way up to being the campaign director. Once I started, I just really dug in because it was just so clearly what I was made to be doing.
And I think the possum thing, you know, hunting, that was when you were working for them, right? So.
What was that? It was 2017. That would have been the same year. I don't remember the exact timing. It might have been right afterward, actually.
Okay. Well, can I ask you, like, during your time, how long did you work for them as campaign director?
I was there for about 3 years.
Okay. And during that time, like, what do you recall as being the most successful campaigns that you had for Last Chance for Animals?
Yeah, I mean, the big campaign that I'm most proud of was the campaign against the dog meat trade. And
yes, you were there during that time. Okay.
I was there, well, right when that kind of started. I was there and led that. And it was really amazing to see the public response to that, for one thing, and to see and meet people who were so dedicated to it. I remember being introduced to it by Andrea Gung of the Duo Project.
Yes.
And at that time, she was doing outreach with a lot of other organizations, and Last Chance for Animals was one of them. So, so her organization was really my introduction to the dog meat trade. And then, you know, obviously I've taken it on to be one of one of my life campaigns, you know.
Yes,
So
because
wonderful.
you did move on. And can I ask, like, what year was that? Like, because I found out about the dog meat trade much later than most, but would you say that was 2015 or?
It was probably about that. It was when the Yulin Dog Meat Festival was really starting to gain
Yeah,
attention.
yeah,
And people were just starting to learn about it and protest. And, you know, you were seeing people all around the world starting to speak out about it at
yeah.
that time. Um, and it really hadn't been around that long. The Yulin Dog Meat Festival, I mean, as you know,
It
it's not
started in
something religious.
2009.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just a way for dog meat dealers to make money. You know, it's not
yeah,
some cultural
exactly.
thing, not at all. So yeah, that was definitely you know, kind of a life-changing
Yeah,
issue for me in a lot of ways, you know, not just
absolutely.
professionally, but personally.
Yeah, well, I have to share that. I do share that with you because although I became vegan at age 15, it was at a time like where there was no internet. Like, so I'm at a certain age, so it was like 3 decades ago, and there was no internet. So I was never an animal rights activist. I just saw something with slaughterhouse footage from PETA,
Mm-hmm.
and 5 minutes of that was enough. Like I just, you know, when you're 15 years old, you're also very dramatic. So it's like all or nothing. And my personality has always been like that. There's no gray zone. Like, it's like black or white. So I'm all in or I'm all out. And so I stopped consuming animal products at that age, but I was never an animal rights activist like you. I didn't even know there was such a thing. So I went about my business for many, many years, and it was learning about the Yulin Dog Meat Festival in 2018, which is pretty late, that really woke me up. Like I was shocked. It was shocking. It was because the images of dogs being tortured, boiled alive. I mean, that would shock anyone, of course. But it just, like it lit a fire in me. And then at that point, I was like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah.
What can we do? Because in Canada, and I live in the city of Montreal, I felt like there was nothing. It felt like no one knew about this. And I was like, well, come on, like we should be doing something. And I saw there were a lot of groups in the States, protesting and, creating campaigns around it. And I felt like, oh, what's wrong with us Canadians? Like we need to get on board with this. And when I joined social media for the first time, it was in May 2018 on Facebook. I never had a Facebook profile before.
Oh, wow.
I know. I was kind of anti-social media. I was like, I don't need that in my life. Like my friends, I know them. We don't need to connect on a platform like that. But people were telling me, hey, if you want to get involved with animal rights, you really should go on Facebook because a lot of the groups, form events there. Like you could join them. And so I did. And it's true. It's really a great place to meet other like-minded people. And that, for me, it's like you, it was just so shocking. It woke me up. And then I started slowly seeing other, animal cruelty issues in our home, on the home front, farming of animals, factory farms and all that, fur trade. I mean, the list goes on. Like you said, animal testing. So that, like just open a can of worms, if you will. Like I just, all was like, oh my God, we have to do something. And I felt compelled to get involved with the dog meat trade because I felt like locally here, there was not much being done. And my goal was to enlist new supporters. And I said, vegans should get on board because it's everyone that needs to be involved because this is such a big issue. It's done in countries that, often are communist countries. And so if we want to have an impact, we need the more people, the better, like international community really has to oppose this and put pressure on those countries to enact laws, like a country like China doesn't even have animal rights laws. And that's really scary because they're the second largest economy in the world. And so it's about time that, something be done. So yeah, definitely can relate to you on that front. And I just, before we get into all the work that you've done on the dog cat meat trade front, I just want to take a few moments to talk about Lady Freethinker. So you started it as a blog, being a writer. And can I ask you, like, originally, like your first few blogs, it was about health, or was it more about animal rights, or?
It was about thinking outside of the norms, societal norms, and doing what's right. That was the meaning of the blog. That's why it's called Lady Freethinker, which you never know that it's an animal rights organization. And it was
I love it. It's like let's think,
Well, exactly. And I, the first few posts covered a lot of different topics. There were animals, there were humanitarian topics, environmental topics. And over time, my heart is really with animals. So over time, I just really started writing about animals more than anything else. It just kind of happened organically. They were always there from the beginning, even though the intention wasn't to be an animal rights organization. I didn't want to limit myself really to anything. And I still don't feel limited. There might be a time when Lady Freethinker does more with humanitarian and environmental efforts. But right now, the animals,
there's so much to do for animals.
Exactly.
You got a many years to come. Unfortunately, it's the case. But how did it go from being a blog to now being a nonprofit, an international nonprofit, no less, with staff? I mean, how did it grow over time? Was it quick, or was it really progressive?
It was a lot of hard work. I mean, I was basically working 2 full-time jobs. I would go home and just, work all night on, at first it was just writing, but then it started to get more activist driven and issue based. Eventually we started publishing petitions, and I was like studying, how to grow an organization. I mean, it was really kind of
so much work,
slow, laborious, guerrilla style. And somehow it managed to work, basically.
And you had no support, like friends, or were they?
I mean, I poured tens of thousands of dollars of my own money into Lady Freethinker when we were starting. Yeah, and I never really expected to. I mean, I hoped that at some point it would be a sustainable organization. I'm very, very thankful that happened, but that was never the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal was just to get the message out and to
try to inspire as many people as possible to join the movement. Exactly. Well, it's amazing you've achieved that goal for sure. And Lady Freethinker today, you have writers, you have undercover investigators. Like, would you say, how many support staff do you have at this point? Or
I mean, we have a staff of 6 people right now. Okay. And they're super dedicated people who want to help animals as much as I do. And I mean, I couldn't do this without them. So I'm extremely grateful for everyone who works so hard to help these animals and helps us do what we do.
Excellent. And so I guess you kind of answered my first question on the dog meat trade front, because when you first heard about it, was Yulin or through Last Chance for Animals? Yeah.
Well, it was the Yulin Dog Meat Festival. It was while I was working at LCA. I learned about it mostly through the Duo by Andrea Gong. I mean, there's kind of a swirl of people who were working on the issue at that time. Andrea had actually been there, so she was a firsthand source and very dedicated to helping end it. And then there were a few other groups at the time, I can't even remember them all, who were sort of collaborating on this. And we were making videos and
trying to raise awareness.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. And Andrea Gong, I think she's Taiwanese by origin, or
that could be.
Okay, we're not sure.
I know that she's spent time in Yulin and in China and does a lot of work there.
They do great work. And I think recently this year, I believe, or was it last year, they opened their first animal education center. Or, I mean, it's kind of a center.
I think she was working on something like that. So, I'm very happy to hear it.
And I think, like many, she learned that it's not going to happen overnight, and to to stop, like, the shame and blame game, and to move on to more, compassion, and, reaching out to locals, because it's going to have to come from them.
It does. Ultimately, we need to
Yeah.
raise our voice, but the change has to happen from within.
Absolutely. It won't happen otherwise. But okay, so that's how you heard about it. And I know that you formed a partnership with Nami Kim, but like, I don't know how that came about, so you're no longer working at Last Chance for Animals. At this point, you're heading Lady Freethinker.
Right. Yeah. And I started Lady Freethinker before I started working at Last Chance for Animals. So I think it was about a year before I started working there. And then, yeah, eventually when I was able to focus on that full time, I did. So yeah, I'd known Nami in the community. Mostly we communicated on Facebook, and I kept up with her work. And
she's good with Facebook.
She's amazing. She's better than I will ever be.
I know. She's an impressive lady. Yeah, absolutely. Her English too.
Yeah.
Because I did have a couple of conversations with her, and she's pretty impressive. Like, she's all there, and she can understand English. And I'm like, I wish my Korean was anywhere near as good as her English, but
yeah, that's another story. But she is so dedicated, and Lady Freethinker is really about education and awareness and getting the message out. But the rescue side is also really important, and she focuses on rescue. So it's kind of a natural partnership, because even though my organization isn't actually on the ground doing rescues, we do support people who are on the ground doing rescues to still help save those animals in the way that we can. And Nami saves, almost every day she's saving a new dog, and she goes to the local meat farms and the restaurants and all that, and she saves a lot of animals. So she was someone that I really wanted to help. And she's also an activist, and she delivers our petitions to mayors' offices, and really is out there fighting for change in addition to saving dogs.
So, and more importantly, she's local, like she's a Korean, because often people support, foreign groups, but really it's so important to support the locals that are against this as well. They need resources. And, when most of the population is not going to be pro animal rights, like, they need us to come and, give them the finances that they need.
Yeah, no, I think that a lot of organizations like Save Korean Dogs do rely on support from
absolutely. And I would be curious, I don't know, I don't think I asked her, but I'd be curious, her donations pool, if it comes mostly from foreigners. Probably, I would hazard a guess. I think it's because the Yulin thing, Yulin festival, when it reached mass coverage, and enlisted so many people from over here that were outraged at seeing dogs, man's best friend being tortured. So whereas locally, maybe, out of respect for their elders, they might not be as vocal. They might not feel, at liberty to oppose a trade that maybe their parents support, or, especially in Korea, I heard through my guests that there's still a strong need to, respect your elder. And when they go to restaurants as a family, usually it's the head of the family, the eldest man, that orders for the family. So if he orders dog meat, you're kind of gonna eat it,
I didn't realize that. Actually, that's very interesting.
Oh yeah, you never heard that?
I never heard that. No, I knew that older men usually ate the dog meat. That I knew. But just that social aspect of the family. No, that's very.
Well, yeah, I think I forget who told me that, but I have a local activist friend now who lives in Toronto. He's originally from New York, but he spent many years teaching English in South Korea. As Kevin Leahy, I don't know if you heard of him, but they did the only, to date, undercover investigation of the dog meat farms in South Korea. And they released a film called dog meat, Korean dog meat expose. And there's also the Dog Meat Professionals, which is a longer film. And it was through my conversations with them, him and his partner at the time. Well, they said that's what they observed. Mm-hmm. And also, I think, oh yeah, I had a guest on that's Last Chance for Animals. They are supportive of a young Korean, and it's Animal Liberation Wave. That's yeah. Right. And so she also agreed that that's kind of the mentality. Yeah. Okay. But anyways, moving on. So you kind of, basically started messaging Nami Kim. You see her post, Save Korean Dogs. And at what point do you actually physically go there? Because I know you've done some trips to South Korea, and I'm very curious how that came about. When was it? And, what was the goal of the trip?
Yeah, so I went in 2019 in the summer during the Bacnal dog eating days. We weren't there on an actual Bacnal date, but it was in that time period.
Yeah.
And, honestly, I've just been campaigning against the dog meat trade so much. I felt like I really had to finally see it firsthand.
Yeah.
Because, pictures don't really take you there. And I just felt like it was time, after all these years to really just actually be there and to see it.
I do not know how many more or how many millions of dogs needs to be sacrificed for that bowl of dog meat soup. There's still people eating, despite the fact that 1 out of 4 households here in Korea owns pet. They have not had any gentle, kind care in their whole life. A lot of fear in them, Why is this human so nice to me? That would be their first reaction. And then as they warm up, they become more, open up. But some dogs, the trauma is something that even time and patience cannot heal, The conditions of dog farms or slaughterhouses is something beyond imagination. They hang the dogs and beat up the dogs. There is this belief, the harder it gets beaten, the tenderer the meat gets, I just don't know how to describe it. It's just too much. I myself is very, very traumatized because I have seen too much. So all we could do is to try to raise awareness and educate the people. Our bus ad campaign, please do not eat me. Dogs are family, not food. That's the message that we're trying to get across to the public.
And these 2 cuties were rescued from a dog meat slaughterhouse, and they're going to be going to the U.S. to be adopted and finally get the loving forever homes that they deserve. Isn't that right? I want to make a donation on behalf of Lady Freethinker to help you save these dogs, because I think you're doing amazing work here. So I just want to give you a check.
Whoa!
So that's for you. That's for the dogs.
My goodness! Oh no, you know what? I mean, when I opened it, I couldn't believe my eyes. How many zeros there?
So we've arrived at Los Angeles International Airport. We have 4 dogs with us, rescued from the dog meat trade. We have Tobias, Charlene, Cheryl, Becca, and all of these dogs are now going to go get good, loving homes and not be killed for dog meat.
look around. Maybe there are few dogs somewhere near your shelter needs your love and care. You never know.
So yeah, I went with my husband Ben, who has always been a strong supporter of Lady Freethinker, and it was, I mean, in some ways, almost a
Hey, that's so
co-founder.
cool. It's
You know,
important.
he's helped me from the beginning.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So we went there together, and you know, the goal was to meet the dogs that Nami had, who she'd rescued, and also to see a dog meat farm, and you know, hopefully film it. You know, we knew we weren't able to actually sneak onto one, you know, undercover and do like an expose like the one you're talking about, which would have been even harder than what we did. So
it's a big risk.
Yeah. But we did find one, a big commercial farm, and it was behind this kind of tall brick wall, and we had a ladder, and
was it, do you know what area it was in?
it was in Gimpo. It was in the kind of agricultural area. There were a lot of other types of farms there too. They had pigs and cows. And then this, you know, dog farm just sort of nestled in there, stashed away.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we climbed over a wall when we did document it, and we actually did manage to get some footage that we got into the Daily Mail, and
kind of over the fence.
It was over the fence.
Yeah.
With a zoom lens, and it was a farm that could hold up to 1,000 dogs, and they were just in rows, you know, factory farm basically, in rows of metal cages, and barking. And it was really sad because the last Bacchanal date was so close, and you know, I mean, these dogs,
you knew where they were going to end up. And when you, it's interesting that you say like a factory farm, because from my talks and conversations, especially with the dog meat expose documentary, they say that there's like probably 20,000 farms in South Korea. But everything, it differs, because there's large scale farms that are a little bit more similar to a factory farm, although it's still primitive, the setup. And then they have the very like backyard farm that they call the rogue farmers. And that's where the conditions are as bad as it gets. And there's often extreme violence to the dogs. Yeah, but when you documented or witnessed it firsthand, that particular farm, there is a difference. It's not like a factory farm over here, because it's not an enclosed space. It's really out in the elements.
That's right. These dogs at least get fresh air.
Yeah, well, they get fresh air, but they also freeze to death, right?
Oh, well,
yeah.
They're exposed to elements. Absolutely. Yeah. And this is summer, so we weren't thinking about that. But yeah, I mean, it's a horrible way to treat any animal. And,
and like, do you remember the stench? Because I was told
the stench was horrible. The stench, the barking. I mean, maybe one of the reasons they have to hide them so much is because the dogs are loud. You know, the dogs are what allowed us to find the farm. From the road. We could hear the barking, even though it was hidden. But yeah, and the smell was horrifying. Absolutely horrifying.
Yeah. And how did you feel like when you witnessed this? I mean, were you the one with the camera, or
Ben had the camera? But I mean, we all climbed up the ladder and looked over it and saw what was happening. I mean, that was that was the hardest trip that I've ever taken in my life. You know, it really did affect me. You know, and when the trip was over and we were in the cab headed back to Seoul, where the airport is, I mean, I literally sobbed the entire way in the taxi, and I was like, I couldn't help. It was uncontrollable. It was completely uncontrollable. It was like just this like well of emotion that you know had just kind of all gathered there after seeing these things, and there was just no turning it off. And you know, I was kind of embarrassed because the cab driver was probably like, what is wrong with her?
What's wrong with this lady?
Yeah,
Americans are crazy.
Yeah, seriously. But I mean, there was just no stopping it.
And you did not witness per se like a dog being slaughtered. You just
I did not see any slaughter.
Thank God.
Yes.
But yeah, it does take its toll, and that's why I have so much respect and admiration for, you know, people like at Lady Freethinker that do undercover work, because you're left with those scars, right? You know, like you cannot unsee what you saw, and it does have an impact on you. And that's part of my questions later on. But for now, I just would like to focus a little bit more about the trip in South Korea. Was this the first time you were going to Southeast Asia, or?
I'd been to other parts of Southeast Asia before, on vacation.
Yeah.
Not for anything like this.
Thailand, or
I've
where?
been to Thailand,
Yeah.
and Vietnam, and Cambodia.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. And when you were much younger, or?
Maybe about 8 years or so ago. So,
But at the time, were you an animal rights activist?
This was right when I was getting started with Lady Freethinker. So it was before I really knew. It was definitely before I knew about the dog and cat.
Okay. That was my other question, because like on those trips, like you're probably in a more touristic area.
Exactly.
So you don't see.
If I would go now, I would seek those places out now that I'm aware that it's happening.
Exactly.
At that time, yeah, I just had no idea. So,
and a lot of people, like, I found it surprising that I had a guest on my show that's Chinese, and she didn't even know about Yulin Dog Meat Festival. She learned about it when she was studying in the UK, graphic design, and she saw a BBC documentary on it, and then she was like, "Oh, is this true?" And then she went to Yulin, and I think the following year, and she saw that it was in fact true, but she had never heard about it. It's, you know, it goes to show that especially a country as big as China, it's still, you know, like 10% of the population about that consume dog meat regularly.
Right. Yeah. Very small. I mean, yeah, even though 20 million dogs sounds high, it, you know, in comparison to the number of people there, it's actually very small.
Yeah, exactly. Very true. And you always think it's like
clear, you know, because some people try and use that to say derogatory things about other races, and it's really such a small minority. It's such
exactly. And you know, I will repeat myself again, because when I started the podcast, I did have discussions with Andrea, actually. And she, you know, she doesn't want to send the wrong message. She definitely is not against China.
Exactly.
And I'm not either, but, you know, I guess because it's called Stop Yulin, and there was so much.
Yeah, it's a, you know, it's a fine line, you know, and it's one that I think as an activist, we have an obligation to be aware of, and to be respectful of the culture and be respectful of all the amazing activists who are in China or are in Korea, like Nami, who are working to end the dog meat trade and doing an amazing job at it.
Exactly. And so, yeah, the podcast is definitely not against any country.
No, I know that.
It's about the trade, the practice. I mean, that's what we're trying to expose and change. But but speaking of South Korea, so your time there, how long were you there for about?
We were in Gimpo for about a week. And then we were supposed to, I mean, we stayed in Seoul for a few days after, which was supposed to be like the vacation, decompression, unwinding. But it was honestly really, I mean, there was
no time for that.
No, I mean, because we couldn't forget, you know, what we'd just been through.
So let's go on a beach. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And Seoul is such a beautiful city. You know, if I had to do it again, I think I probably would have gone to Seoul first to actually enjoy
yourself before.
and then,
because I guess the dog meat farms are not in Seoul.
Definitely not. No, I don't think, I mean, there used to be a small number of dog meat markets in Seoul. I think they're all gone. The ones that do live slaughter are definitely all gone. I mean, there might be something here or there, but it's not there. You don't see dog meat in Seoul.
That's right. I remember seeing like the announcement. I think Seoul was declared dog meat slaughter free. Right. But a lot of people read that as dog meat free, and they were like, "Oh, that's amazing." But one of my guests said, "Nah. I mean, the dogs are just being slaughtered elsewhere, and it's actually worse in some cases because then you don't have public scrutiny. People don't see what's going on, and so you know." God
That's
knows what goes on. We all know it's a very cruel trade, but yeah, I can't imagine going to Seoul as a tourist and seeing a dog being slaughtered in front of me. And that was the whole point. It was to clean up the image and to make it more tourist friendly. But well, they've achieved that.
Every step is a step,
Yeah.
and I'll take it. And I know you're going to ask about this later, but we're in such a good place in Korea right now. I'm so hopeful. I'm so hopeful.
Oh, yes. And I do want to ask you about that because it's on everyone's mind, actually. A lot of people are messaging me lately trying to say, we should do something, for the presidential elections in 2022. And, that's, forefront of my mind. Like, how can we support, the groups in Korea? So we'll talk about that. But when you were there or with your talks with Nami Kim, are they seeing a shift in, attitudes towards dog meat? Like, would you say South Koreans are more and more embracing dogs as, friends and pets and not food?
I mean, the pet industry has definitely grown. And I mean, I think the same is true in China.
Yes.
But I mean, I do feel like that. I feel like in general, South Korea has been more westernized. I mean, we've been allies with them for a long time. And so I do think that we've influenced their attitudes in many ways. And I do think that that's one of them. And that along with having pets, young generations aren't eating dog meat. It really is like those old men who have their boshing on Bacall, and those are the ones who are really keeping this industry going. But after they're I don't want to be morose.
But that's what Nami says. She's like, give it 20 years, Jade, and it's gonna be over. Because the younger generation is going to take office and, the government and make better decisions and hopefully.
Exactly.
I think it is a dying trade, but I guess we're just not patient enough. We want it to be gone yesterday.
Well, it's hard to be patient when you're seeing that happen.
The level of cruelty, because that's what is and the incentive is to end it because it is so horrible. But at least in South Korea, I guess the younger generation is a little bit more opposed to it. But in Vietnam, I had one of my guests actually discourage me a little bit because she said that in Vietnam, actually, it's becoming trendy to eat dog or cat meat, especially cat meat, from younger people because their, I guess their social status went up. They have more disposable income, and they feel like, like as a treat on a Friday night, let's go have beer and cat meat instead of like, okay, let's have another burger like everyone else. So for them, it's more exotic, it's more interesting. And I was like, oh, okay. We have a lot of work to do for the cats in Vietnam, for sure. But, hopefully with time and there's so many groups involved in Vietnam, although it's a communist country, I believe, so.
Well, I would call it very, very loosely.
Not like China. It's not the same.
And if you go there, you're going to find Starbucks. You're going to find.
It's westernized a lot.
It's very westernized.
Okay. So have you heard if there's a prevalent cat meat trade in South Korea? Like when you were there?
South Korea does not have a cat meat trade that I'm aware of. And I'm sure that it does happen on some small levels somewhere. In the US, it happens somewhere on some small level. But no, there it is the dog meat trade. And there is the Dog Farmers Association. And it's the only country in the world that has commercial dog meat farming. So if you go to China, if you go to Vietnam, these dogs are kidnapped and sold, but they're not raised on these big farms. And there have been recent studies that have shown that. So South Korea has this real industry, like our farming industry, that includes dogs. And it's in this sort of gray area legally, because even though technically, dogs aren't like regular livestock, It's still allowed to happen, and it's still subsidized by the government. And I think the biggest hurdle is overcoming that industry, more so than the minds of the people who, most of them don't eat dog meat. But anytime you're trying to dismantle an industry where people have careers based on slaughtering dogs, it's going to be hard to get rid of. I mean, that's the biggest obstacle that I can see.
Well, especially in South Korea, because they have dog meat trade associations, or dog meat professionals.
It's a professional, organized, agricultural institution. And then that's harder, because it's legal. Like, the government knows about it and regulates it to some degree, and that makes things more difficult.
And from what I've seen and researched, and some of my guests have agreed that it's like a $2 billion industry per year. So when you have money, every time you have something tied to money and someone's livelihood, it becomes very difficult to go against that, especially when they're associated together and, fighting for their cultural right to eat dog meat, right? But no need to get discouraged, because, as we said, it's more like a generational issue at this point. And so eventually it will die off. I'm very confident, but, when that will be, well, we're hoping sooner than later.
We're hoping soon, and I'm very optimistic. I really am. I'm optimistic.
Yes. Okay. Is Nami Kim as well optimistic? Or?
Well,
I know she
I'd have to ask her level of optimism.
Yeah.
But we're doing what we can. We've collaborated on a petition to urge the next administration to ban dog meat. President Moon did just create this this committee that's going to discuss it, and that's a first step, but that's a big step, and you need that step to get to the next one. And it's a topic right now in their political conversation, and the general mood, from what I've seen, is to ban it. Now, what happens after the election, who knows? But
well, I do want to, since we're on the topic, I do want to read, in case some viewers are not aware, the 2022 South Korean presidential election, or the 20th Republic of Korea presidential election, will take place on March 9th, 2022. And Lady Freethinker has a petition out on the presidential campaign that highlights the work of Lee Jae-myung. I hope I didn't massacre his name. A presidential candidate for the ruling Democratic Party of Korea, who wants to establish a law banning the consumption of dog meat, which would be exactly what we need. It's not just a slaughter, not just a sale, but the actual consumption in the country. Jae-myung was responsible for shutting down the Moran dog meat market, which we all heard of. I think it was in 2019.
Yeah, that was a
horrible place. When he was mayor. Jae-myung's pledge to ban eating dog meat is further bolstered by President Moon's recent statement that it is time to seriously consider the ban on dog meat. So, this gives us much hope. But are you aware how he's how the polls are at this point? Is there any
I haven't seen any polls yet. So.
Okay. No, but
we will see.
But in terms of Nami, is she confident that he could actually win this election, or you haven't had the time to discuss it?
I just don't want to speak for her. I think we're hopeful and just waiting at this point to see.
Okay, because the fact that South Korea is a democratic, political system gives us a lot more hope, because a country like China, we all know that it's run by the CCP, and that even their citizens have no voice. So we have some hope here with South Korea.
President. Conservative opposition candidate Yoon Suk-yeol was elected in one of the most closely fought races in recent history, which will shape Asia's fourth largest economy for the next 5 years. Yoon, who is 60, edged out the ruling Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung by a fraction. A formal announcement is expected to be made on Thursday. The People Power Party candidate said he would work with opposition parties to heal polarized politics and foster national unity, calling the election a, quote, victory of the great people.
승리가 아닌가 그렇게 생각을 합니다.
Yoon's 5-year term will begin this month to replace incumbent President Moon Jae-in, who is constitutionally barred from seeking re-election. The White House congratulated Yoon, saying President Joe Biden looked forward to working closely with him to bolster the alliance. Despite being a political novice, Yoon shot to fame after spearheading high-profile investigations into corruption scandals engulfing Moon's aides.
이제 우리는 이런 부패하고
We have to stop the corrupt and incompetent ruling forces' attempt to extend their term and plunder people.
He has pledged to stamp out graft, foster justice, and create a more level playing field while seeking a reset with China and a tougher stance towards reclusive North Korea. More than 77% of South Korea's 44 million eligible voters cast ballots to pick their next leader, despite an unprecedented surge in new COVID-19 cases, with a record 342,446 posted on Wednesday.
In terms of, for me, while I have you on the show, I want to talk to you a little bit about, as far as you know, because through my many conversations with guests, I'm trying to establish if, in fact, all the torture videos and images that we've seen all over social media and the internet, if it was really just more isolated cases, or if the torture aspect on the dogs, prior to slaughter, is that more of standard, in those countries?
So in most situations, slaughterhouse workers are slaughterhouse workers and they're indifferent, they're doing their job.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they're, for the most part, these malicious people who just really want to torture a dog.
Yeah.
And it takes more time to torture a dog, and they're really just trying to be efficient. But the problems are there's no real system in place to ensure that the dog is not still alive when they're being boiled.
Yeah.
That after they're clubbed in the head and their throat slit, they can still be wriggling around and squealing and thrown into a pot of boiling water, or torched or things like that. So there's no doubt that that dogs are cooked alive in some instances, and there are probably, from what I've heard, isolated cases where people do torture the dogs because there is this myth that it makes the meat taste better, or that the testosterone flows through, and then when men eat it, it makes them more virile. And I mean, there are very harmful myths like that that, from what I've heard, and again, I have not witnessed this firsthand, but from what I've heard, does lead to torture of these animals.
Well, actually, Nami Kim, speaking of her, I had on my podcast someone who adopted the first one to come to the U.S. The first dog, his name was Smiley, and Nami Kim had first rescued him, and then he got adopted out to a local Korean family. A nice couple, but it turns out that fortunately, one of her volunteers for Safe Korean Dogs lived next door.
Oh.
And at one point, the couple went out on vacation, and there was an elderly man living with them. We're not sure if there was any family ties, but he was caught torturing this dog.
Really?
And the volunteer next door heard the screams of the dog, and he's like, what's going on?
God.
And he rushed over, and he saw that the man was beating him and it was about to put them in the boiling pot of water to cook him. And so there is a prevalent belief around that, especially for older people.
Yeah.
So yes, it's not like the farmers are deliberately torturing the dogs, but it's inherently cruel, right?
Well, it's inherently cruel, and even the killing methods, if they're not trying to torture, they hang them. They electrocute them.
Exactly.
There's no humane way to string up a dog and hang them from a rafter. Like, that's just, it's a horrific way to die.
And the fact that these farms are not regulated, so there's no protocol to follow. It's not like farms here where when you go to the slaughterhouse, there's like a whole thing where the animal is stunned. Hopefully he passes out before he has throat is slit. It's nothing regulated, no government protocols to follow. It's really go for it, like a free for all. And so this is why the backyard farmers are particularly cruel because they have that belief. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do believe the torture is on that smaller scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, I mean, as an industry, it's not efficient to go around torturing the animals, and
no, it's too time consuming.
Exactly, and as horrible as the industry is, at least there's no time for that. But that doesn't mean that these animals aren't suffering on this
absolutely. It's like farm animals here, they suffer tremendously, even though it's regulated and government subsidized as well.
Fairly regulated.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so in terms of solutions to this horrific trade, with the current pandemic, so the pandemic really started in 2019, late 2019, but when we got wind of the gravity of the situation was more in the spring of 2020, and it basically shut down all global economies. So I would think that this should have an impact on the way governments run their countries, and that everyone should be a little bit more, careful about these wet markets. Yeah. So do you believe the pandemic will bring about change for the dog meat trade, not just, wet markets like wildlife trafficking?
I think it's another accelerant in the process. I don't think it's going to single-handedly end it, but I do think that it's brought a heightened awareness, and now it's so much clearer than it used to be that there's a human health risk, and it's not just cruelty to dogs, but especially with the dog meat trade, you have the rabies risk, and it's very unhealthy for people to eat these dogs. It's a risk.
Well, these dogs are stolen. They're often strays. They have diseases. And so not just for the workers involved in the trade, but the consumer as well.
No, these are sick dogs. I mean, they're
distemper, God knows.
Yeah, it's not a safe food to eat.
Well, so I'm really hoping, but I think that's in part why the Chinese government made that statement.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I know we were all really happy, when they did that, but then.
And just to clarify to viewers, the statement being dogs are considered pets and not food, and definitely not on the post-COVID-19 livestock catalog. But many argue that they were never part of the livestock list before the pandemic. And people were like not so encouraged because they were like, they've made statements like that before. But then I've spoken to other nonprofits that are like, well, we do have to take like encouragement from this, because they did not have to make that statement. China doesn't do anything they don't want to do. But
it's progress. And I honestly will welcome any progress from.
Yeah, and let's hope the next one is animal welfare laws in that country. But
yes, there's a
like
lot.
If there could be something.
Yes,
exactly.
Just one anti-cruelty law, please.
Yeah, like please. Because I fear, China will become the world's super economy next decade.
On its way, and it's going to be setting an example for a lot of people, and not just that, but just the sheer volume of animals in its agricultural systems right now. They need protection.
Absolutely, they do. And so that statement was nice, but it wasn't followed through with a law. And so at first there was a lot of confusion. People were like, oh, well, it's over.
I know that happens every time the government makes a statement. Everyone's like, it's over. And then we'll post a news article about the dog meat, and people write in, but I thought it ended.
But how come? The government said they're not food. But the fact that it's not regulated, no one's policing anyone. And I think it was Carrie, the founder of Candy Cane Rescue, that said it best. She said, in a country, like there's always people that are cruel and heartless, like in every country, there'll be, some bad apples like that.
Yeah.
And she goes, the problem with a country like China is those people have free reign to do whatever they want. There's no deterrent to their behavior. So they can go around killing a dog.
You mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll see them kind of use other laws that might apply, but like property laws and things like that. So, and thankfully we do see rescues. We do see, when these activists block the dog meat transport trucks and notify the police, many times the police will confiscate the animals for health code violations usually. So thankfully, even though there's not a concrete animal cruelty law, there are other laws that can still be used to help the animals. And in some cases, officials are using them, which does make me hopeful. But of course, that does not replace an actual law. And
with penalties,
really
and
they make that a priority very soon.
Yeah. Well, even in our country, I think the penalties are very benign.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, we still have so much work to do here.
I know.
Yeah, we're not coming from a pedestal. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
The whole world has a lot to do to help animals.
Well, in terms of finding solutions, because that was my goal with the podcast, is to first of all understand what the problem is. Why are they torturing? Like for me, that was one of my biggest questions. Like, okay, eat the dog, don't torture him. Like I didn't understand that. And to this day, I kind of still don't get it. But one of my guests, who's a local Chinese, she said that it's also tied into traditional Chinese medicine. We have all sorts of examples where, bear bile is used to treat certain things. Mm-hmm. And there was a prevalent belief in traditional Chinese medicine that dog meat helps increase the qi, the vital energy of someone, and to be eaten before the big winter. It would help you stay warm during the cold summer.
Which is funny because in Korea, they eat them to stay cool.
And well, also in China, because the Yulin festival happens on the summer solstice. So it's a lot of like nonsense to us. But, once a thought and belief is ingrained in your mind, like it's hard to make someone stop believing it, And I think, from my talks, I think it's a lot of desensitization to animal pain, because a lot of these people grew up seeing their father engaged in the trade, seeing them from the get-go, so that becomes normal. I mean, if it's not normal, you won't be able to survive that family, right? So you have to. It's like a survival mechanism. So your brain says, okay, this is acceptable. This is what goes on. And there's no problem.
And there's a detachment from the animals. And that's a tactic in war also. How do you get, hundreds of thousands of men to brutally
kill others?
It's just the other. They don't have feelings. They're detached. They're different than you somehow. So they're feeling like they don't really.
You're fighting a war for us, for what's right, what we believe in. Yeah, exactly.
It's surprisingly easy to do that, to detach yourself and lose empathy for the other, all it takes is that separation. And I think that humans are just sort of naturally capable of that. It's how we've survived for a long time, but we don't have to survive that way anymore.
No, we don't. Hopefully we'll have a vegan world one day.
I truly believe we will. It's not going to happen in my lifetime, but
but that's another question I always ask my guests.
Sorry.
No. It's more, I do believe, like you, probably a vegan world will never happen in my lifetime. I'm a certain age. I'm not like, 18 years old here.
You look fantastic. I mean, not the way that like being older is not fantastic, but you don't look.
Oh, well, thank you. It must be all the plant-based.
Head from when you became vegan, you don't look that age. That was
thank you so much. I really appreciate solutions of dog meat trade. I know that I wanted to get your thoughts on the U.S. actually passed a law against the dog cat meat
Yes.
consumption. That was the Dog and Cat Meat Trade Prohibition Act of 2018, HR 6720. And that was headed by many groups, Animal Hope
Yeah.
and Wellness Foundation and all that. And that
Mhm.
was a huge victory, because they did that because when they were negotiating with those countries where there is a prevalent dog meat, they would always ask them, well, is it illegal in your country? And so
Right.
at the time, they couldn't say, yes, it is. No, it
Yeah.
wasn't. And so that was a really huge victory. And it took a lot of effort. Oh, my
It
God.
did. Yeah, Elsie
Oh,
Hastings, right? He was
yes.
fantastic, and he died recently.
Yeah,
But
I
he was a real
know.
champion for
He
the
was a
animals.
champion for this movement. And so we're also very grateful to him. God bless his soul.
Mhm.
But in Canada, like I live in Canada,
Mhm.
and I was like, noticed there was a petition started by a Vancouver based foundation called Arf Arf Bark Bark Foundation. And it's James, yeah, it's cute. James Chai, who started the petition, but I think he was also suggested to start the petition by, because he was working at the time with Animal Hope and Wellness Foundation. They started a legislative division. And so he started that petition. We garnered, like I helped promote the petition. I think I spent many summers just trying to get people to sign it. And we got like, over 130,000 signatures. But, I've spoken to what is it called? Humane Canada. And they're the ones to really talk to MPs and to, enact changes for animal rights. And they kept telling me, Jade, you have no idea. Like, we have a list this long, it always gets pushed back. And so they're like, we're not going to focus our energy on dog cat meat because it's not a problem here.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, yeah, but it should be a no-brainer, like
I
that's
agree.
why
Yeah.
it should be a no-brainer. And most of the public that I spoken to when I was, promoting the petition, they were shocked that it's perfectly legal to eat a dog or a cat.
Yeah.
There's no law. And so they were like, man, I can't believe it's not illegal.
Yeah.
And so, like, what are your thoughts on this law that was passed in the States? Do you think every developed nation should pass such a law to try to pressurize those countries in Southeast Asia that, like to say a united front, like we're developed nations. This is a standard, like we're all banning dogs and cats from the menu. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think when you pass a law like that, you're making a statement about the ethics to which you subscribe and that influences others. So even if it's not a problem that you see all the time, having that law shows where you stand on it. And I think it's important to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that, just like everything we do to raise awareness and get the message out, passing a law, even if it never, gets anyone prosecuted, just having that law is making the statement and building that awareness and showing something to the world. And just the publicity that happens after you pass a law brings attention to the situation in other countries. So I don't know, I think it was a huge victory when that happened. And it makes a strong statement, and I do think that it has an influence. And we all know that change doesn't happen overnight, and people love to say, well, why would they listen to you? You're a foreigner. Why would they care? But the truth is that people care what other people think.
Oh yeah,
no
the reputation,
where they live,
which is why China made that statement, because they knew they were targeted after COVID came out of the wet market in Wuhan.
Yeah, the wet markets. Yeah. So yeah, other countries absolutely influence other countries, and you can't just not speak up because, oh, well, they won't care because I'm over here and over there.
Yeah.
No way. I mean, animal cruelty is a global issue. It affects every single country, and there is not any cruelty that we should just ignore or not speak out about, as long as animals
absolutely. So in terms of strategies, like what would you say are some, I guess, continue to campaign, raise awareness? Like, do you have anything else that we as foreigners, especially foreigners, most of my viewership is in the States and the UK and Europe. Some in Canada. So what would you say are some of the strategies we should pursue as foreigners to help, bring about change in those countries?
Well, absolutely do keep raising awareness, posting on social media, sharing investigations. I like to tell people to write to the consulate in the country that they live. For example, we have the Chinese embassy in DC.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have something similar in Canada, some sort of embassy, where you can actually express your views, and then they then report back to that country. So that can be an effective way.
Like a letter campaign. Obviously, ideally more than one.
Yes, ideally more than one. We've delivered petitions to the Korean embassy here in Los Angeles, actually, to the consulate.
Yes.
So that is one thing that you can do, and sometimes you get a response, sometimes you don't, but they're reading it, and we have embassies and consulates specifically so that we can interact with people from other countries and have a voice. So
okay, well, I know that in terms of petitions, you have been extremely successful and effective with your petitions, because a lot of people have told me, well, a petition for a country like China signed by foreigners will do nothing. But maybe China, maybe that's the case. But it shouldn't. I don't want to discourage people from signing petitions, because we have talked about that on my podcast, and some of my guests were like, what's the efficacy? But you're proof that your petitions, and that's why I say, my question to you, because you've been so successful at this, part of campaigning, what makes a good petition? What makes a petition a good petition? And what are some key things that people should look for before signing a petition to say, okay, this is worth my time, and I should share it because it's going to go somewhere,
Yeah, well, I mean, a good petition has a very specific ask, and it has a goal in mind. And I mean, there are issues. There are bigger issues that you can create a petition for, but you'd want a specific ask and for the target to make sense. For example, for something like the dog meat trade, you want to target a government official who has the power to actually do something about it.
Yeah.
So I would look for that, target who can make an impact, and a specific ask for them. That's something that they can directly respond to. A petition is effective on multiple levels. I compare petitions to protests. It's kind of the same thing as going out on the street, holding a sign in front of.
I'm against this.
Yeah, but you're doing it online, and you're showing your power in numbers, and it's a lot of people coming together to raise their voice about a specific issue. So in that aspect, there are a couple ways that a petition can be a success, and that is if it's shared a lot and reaches people and educates people on an issue that they might never have known about it. I remember protesting outside of Ringling Brothers Circus against elephants in the circus.
Yeah.
And it took a really long time for Ringling to finally stop using elephants. It took years and probably thousands of protests. Eventually they did. It was too late and they went out of business. But what we did with the protests, beyond just, getting someone at Ringling to do something, was informing the public about what happens to elephants in the circus.
Yeah.
And that led to this sort of wave of a lot of municipalities here, including Los Angeles, banning any sort of animal in the circus. So so that, so you have to think beyond the initial ask. And I understand the cynicism that people have. What good is my signature going to do? But it actually, it does. And any change and any progress is not as simple as, yes, one signature and boom, the issue.
Yeah, if only.
Yeah, it's part of an effort, and it's an important part of a bigger effort. But that one signature it carries weight in that effort, and it's how we speak out in this digital age, and especially with COVID, where we're not all going to go gather around the consulate right now,
and it can rally people from all parts of the world, not just like locally, like a protest, yeah,
and then sometimes media will cover a petition, and then it gets an extended reach and raises even more awareness on the issue. So a petition has legs, and I found that more people pay attention to a petition than a regular news article. For whatever reason, there's something about that.
Well, also your petitions, they give a lot of insight, and
they do.
And also it's having a plan of delivery. Like, who is it going for? Is it going to be delivered by what date? Like, to have follow-ups. And that's what Lady Freethinker does so well.
We track it is painstaking, but yes, we track all of our petitions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I want to, because you're on the show, we need to celebrate. You had a huge victory. I don't know if it was in this year or last year, but you did a petition. Lady Freethinker's investigation into a cruel dog fight breeding facility has led to an unprecedented victory for animals. For the first time in Chile's history, a judge issued the maximum possible sentence for animal abuse under new laws, sending the message that cruelty to animals will no longer be tolerated. And for the first time in the country, the court barred an offender from ever having an animal again. So what was that? Was that a petition, or was more of an undercover investigation that you exposed? Or
it was a combination of those things. It was a guerrilla style investigation where our investigator went to a known dogfight breeding kennel facility, and she was so brave. She went there and she captured this unbelievable cruelty. There were I think it was 24 dogs who were all on chains, and they had no food or water. There were
horrific.
Three puppies were just dead, lying on the ground.
Yeah,
like it was like that. Their bowls were coated with green slime. So she took that footage and went to the police, and the police actually raided the place, and they rescued all the dogs who had survived. So that was fantastic. And then following that, of course, we published a petition, and we got some news coverage for that in Chile, some television coverage on a show called Ahora Noticias. Sorry, my accent is terrible.
Oh no, my God, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Sound like a local.
I'm in LA. Like, you have to have a little bit, but it's not that
Spanish. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, compared to the actual Mexicans here, it's not very good. But I do what I can. So that was, a big campaign, and we worked, along with having the petition, we worked with the prosecutors on that. And it was exciting because at that time they had just upgraded their animal cruelty laws. And when they tried our case, we were, eligible for those. So it did end up being a real historic win for animal rights. Yeah. And that was about 2 years ago. But that, when that happened, I was just like, wow, like this really works. This really works.
Yeah.
And you can be anywhere. I've never been to Chile.
No, me either.
We're still able to do this. And it just shows you like the enormous power we
have
now.
Yeah. And was your investigator local to Chile? Or?
She was living there, yeah.
Yeah. That was one of my questions. Like, your investigators at Lady
Freethinker, she was there.
They're a little bit everywhere, I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I see no boundaries for this work. I see no borders. It's everywhere. There are animals suffering. Let's stop it,
And on that front, like, do you take applications, or like, are you growing?
Always.
Okay.
I mean, I'm always looking for a good investigator. If you want to go out there and expose some cruelty, shoot me an email. Let's talk.
All right. We'll send them your way.
Yes.
I also want to touch upon a topic, because you're vegan, I'm vegan. Some of my guests might not be vegan, but with anyone who is, I like to discuss this topic because as someone who's done like both, you've seen the cruelty over here in the West, factory farms, probably animal testing facilities as well. But if we just stick to animal agriculture, let's just call it that. how would you say it compares what goes on here in the West in terms of factory farms, the practices, the way the animals, the conditions for the animals? How does it compare to a place like South Korea, dog meat farms, or any other dog meat trade nation?
And
Like,
I honestly
are they
think
comparable?
absolutely they're comparable. And I think that what we're doing to farmed animals in this country for cheap meat is despicable and horrifying.
Yeah.
And it's hidden torture that happens by the billions. And the dog meat industry, with its, in the tens of millions of victims, pales in comparison to the billions of victims that our industry is creating. And I hope that in my work exposing the dog meat trade, I'm helping open people's eyes to cruelty behind raising animals for slaughter. And and I know that we are. My favorite response to get is from someone who says, I saw your dog meat investigation and I stopped eating meat. And I'm like, yes,
that's amazing.
You get it. You get it.
Yeah.
I think that if you're going to cherry pick the species that you care about, you might, want to do some soul searching about that.
For sure. Fundamentally, they are all the same, of course.
Yeah. And I know that there are good people who eat meat. A lot of my good friends eat meat. I don't judge people for that because, like you said earlier,
it's a journey.
It's a journey, and you can't come from a place of being holier than thou, because that's not going to work with anybody, and you can't beat people over the head with it. All you can do is expose it, try and I don't bring that up at like dinner conversations or anything like that. It's not the time.
No, exactly. Use your judgment when advocating. Absolutely.
But I think that when we address animal cruelty to dogs, it does help people see that. And most people don't agree with what's going on at factory farms. They're just not necessarily, making that connection with their daily habits, and that's being human. We're all hypocrites.
Absolutely. We're all flawed. I mean, that's the first thing. Yeah.
And the unfortunate truth right now is that in order to survive, we have to destroy life. Even as a vegan, there are little animals who were living on cropland.
It's not a perfect world. No,
it's not a perfect world. We live in a house where some land was bulldozed to create. So, there's not one of us, not the most devout vegan, who can say, well, no animal suffers for me, because that's not true.
It's not true. Just driving your car, you're killing so many flies.
So many. Yeah, exactly. And so, my goal is to work toward a world where we can live without destruction. And I think we don't have the technology right now. I think that there will be a time when we do. We have cultured meats on the way. We have food technologies. Impossible Burger is doing amazing things beyond.
I know.
Have these technologies that we didn't have before that are making it possible. And I believe, as the cultivated, cell grown, whatever you want to call it, meat, with the meat that you don't have to kill an animal to get.
Yeah, exactly.
When that's available and it's affordable, I think people will eat it. And I think that we will see a day when animals are not slaughtered for food. And hopefully see a day when animals don't die for cropland, because we'll have some technology to protect them from that. It's just a matter of getting there and getting to that point. And, we focus on the worst atrocities now and do what we can and hope for a better future.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, that question is a little bit, it's a complex question. Are they comparable? I would say fundamentally, yes. I mean, it's all animal cruelty. It's all unnecessary exploitation, commodification of a sentient being. That is equal. But for me, why I'm so focused on the dog meat trade is because I feel this is something winnable in my lifetime, because every country that has a dog meat trade, they also have conventional animal agriculture. So what we do to chickens, cows, pigs, they do the same to them, over there. Because at one point I was discussing with vegans, and they were like, I'm like, listen, I hope you realize that, if we ban the dog meat, it's not like they do eat pigs, cows, and chickens. It's not like they only eat dog meat in those countries. I mean, like, you would think that's obvious. But this is why I'm so focused on it, because like we said at the beginning, I don't see a vegan world in my lifetime, although I wish I would love that, nothing more than that, but it doesn't seem realistic. Whereas dogs and cats in most of the world, they're considered companion animals. And this is why a lot of people become vegan through learning about this trade, because it opens their eyes and makes them realize, oh my God, so if you think this is bad, let me show you factory farming. And then when they see it, because the only reason why they are not vegan, I mean, the people that have compassion in their hearts, is they've never seen it. They haven't been exposed to it. But the dog cat meat did such a splash around the world that it reached people that are not animal rights activists, everyday people. And by seeing that, it makes them think. It opens their mind and eyes to other animal suffering in their home country. And so I do feel it's something winnable, but do you feel the same way? Are you hopeful that we will see the end of this dog cat meat trade sooner than later?
I think in some places we absolutely will. I think in Korea we will. I really do. I do. Other countries won't be as speedy. But I am hopeful. I do think this is winnable. And I think if there's a fight that we can win in animal slaughter right now, it's going to be dogs. It's going to start with dogs. Because
I would say so.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. And so obviously I would be remiss if I didn't ask you before we end our conversation about this YouTube lawsuit. Because when I saw that, I was like, oh my God. And I reached out to a friend of mine who's also been trying to expose this problem. Basically spent years, I don't know how many years.
I keep meaning to call him, by the way. He's on my list.
They've been in touch. They've been in touch. Some of your staff has been in touch. Yeah. No worries. So you're taking on this mega cap company that's called Alphabet. I mean, they own YouTube. And this lawsuit is filed against YouTube for failing to remove content that is in clear violation of its user policies and for neglecting to take action on the countless videos that have been reported to them as inappropriate and in clear breach of their community standards. So when did you have the idea to sue YouTube? And what can you tell us more about these channels? I mean, is it channels or just like random videos?
Oh, no, there are channels who have been operating for years on unarguably cruel content. And we're not talking about the kind of gray areas here. We're talking about fake animal rescues where somebody puts a little puppy in the grip of a python and then comes up and pretends to rescue the puppy as it's being squeezed to death.
To get donations, I guess.
Well, they presumably, you don't know because YouTube is not transparent.
No, you don't know the intent. Yeah.
There are ads on these videos. Presumably, some of them are partners who make a percentage of those ads, but and some do actually ask for donations and pretend to be nonprofits or kind of use phony pretenses to solicit donations, but most of the ones we've seen don't ask for donations, but they do at the very least bring notoriety for the filmmaker and most likely profit. So that and these baby monkeys being tortured is a whole other thing. So there are these just really horrible videos, and we've been, the staff at Lady Freethinker has been researching these for a couple of years now and compiling a lot of data and a lot of information. And we haven't even been able to have a meaningful conversation with YouTube about it because they just refuse to address it. And, we've had some, small victories YouTube did specifically ban fake animal rescues in their community guidelines, and that happened after, we were exposing this issue. But still, we couldn't communicate with them, and we really just we know that they don't want animal cruelty on their platform, or we assume they don't.
Yeah.
But we couldn't have a conversation with them about, our findings and how to prevent it, and all of those things.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the lawsuit was a last resort, because it's
I
just,
mean, if they refuse to talk to you and discuss the matter, I guess you have no choice. But I mean, this is a big one, right? So I know that you have also a petition related to that. So something else that viewers can go click on and please sign.
Yes.
I know you were gathering donations recently, and you actually gathered a good amount for the lawsuit.
We did a fundraiser for the.
Yeah, exactly. I gave, and please, if anyone's out there, please give. Because we need to support this. This is mega. And what I feel is that I was talking to my husband about this. He's a very pragmatic guy, and he said, well, why don't they film one of those YouTube videos with animal cruelty and film the ads? Like, let's say Subaru is being promoted on it, and then blast that all over social media saying, Subaru, you're actually advertising on this channel.
That's a good idea.
Well,
I need a job.
That's a free one. That's a free one. But yeah, I said, well, that sounds like a really good idea. So these are all ways that we as activists can get involved, like, and sometimes people feel like, oh, I can't give money. I'm like, I don't have enough. And I understand that, but it doesn't cost you much to sign a petition. It doesn't cost you much to share a letter campaign or, a video.
Absolutely.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
So how confident are you? Do you have enough evidence at this point to go out?
I can't.
You can't discuss it, right?
I can't talk about the lawsuit. Yeah.
But needless to say, if you're doing it, you must have some kind of,
Well, I mean, like I said, we've been tracking these videos for years. We've published 2 reports already about these animal cruelty videos on YouTube. The evidence is all public. We're not, we haven't been.
You don't have to make it up. It's happening. Yeah, it's out there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so like I said, everyone, please click on the links and please sign those petitions. It's super important. And so I guess one of my final questions for you is, who else should be on the podcast and why? Like, do you have any guest suggestions for me? If you had to take your pick, and I will say that although I started the podcast officially in October of 2019, the podcast was really started to cover the dog cat meat trade. Like I said, I wanted to learn what the issue was and how to change it, solution.
Have you had Nami on? You haven't had Nami on.
I've had 2 conversations with her, and I'm still trying to work out the first podcast we recorded together. Unfortunately, her internet connection was so bad that the video I can't use.
Yeah. She's in a pretty rural area.
Exactly. So I've been talks with Heidi Yulin, who's
Heidi, yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, who's in California. And so we're gonna try to work something out where she'll send me some images and I can, because it's a great conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so that was your guest suggestion for me.
It would have been, yeah. There's actually another fairly new organization in San Diego called World of Angels. And we've actually given them a couple of grants because they have an amazing shelter in China. And even though they're based in San Diego, they have a presence in China. Wow. And they're saving dogs from being sent to slaughterhouses. Basically, these dogs are at puppy mills and they've been spent, and it's such a sad story.
Yeah.
But then the puppy mill owners are just gonna ship them off to slaughter. But they save them, and they have a fantastic shelter. And Yi Ping is the woman's name, and her English is excellent. I mean, she's very Americanized. So
her English is good. Oh wow, I would love that. Because that's often been the problem, because people are like, I wanted to interview local Chinese activists. I've been wanting to do that forever,
Yeah,
and I
that
got to
gets
do
hard.
it. I got to do it. My last
Oh, good.
podcast last month.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's with a Chinese activist. Of course, she had to be anonymous. Yeah, the CCP, it doesn't take well to people criticizing them. But, that was a huge victory. Her English is really good. She worked in Hong Kong for many years, and so she's, highly educated. And so that was a huge feat for me because I always wanted to have local Chinese.
Yeah.
And so this lady sounds like a great guest, and it's World of Angels?
Yeah, World of Angels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you can put in a good word for me,
Absolutely. Yeah.
that would be awesome. And so I thank you so much for your time today. You've been so generous, and I do.
Yeah, I can't believe it's already been an hour and a half. That flew by.
Oh, no, because I was like, okay, I want to respect, our time limit.
Oh, no, I didn't even realize. No, that's great. No, it's great talking with you. I mean, I can talk forever about this, and you're so passionate about it too. I feel like we could probably talk for 5 hours if we.
Well, we're definitely going to have another, have you on the show again. And what I was trying to say before you gave me the guest suggestion is that my podcast did start out on dog cat meat trade. The focus on that industry, if you can call it that. But, in 2022, I'm going to have other animal rights issues covered on the podcast. I had the opportunity to speak with one of the original members of ALF, Animal Liberation. Yeah. And so that was a huge, accomplishment for me because I have so much respect, for those that pioneered the movement, really.
Yeah.
And I have, Shannon Keith, I'm sure you know her, Legal Freedom Project, although we talk a lot about the dog meat trade as well. And so, so a guest suggestion could be someone also involved with other animal rightes. But
okay, well, let me think about that.
World of Angels sounds perfect. I really like it. And often the some people, what they have come to realize is that a lot of the rescue groups that are foreign, like American or even from Europe, they end up buying dogs, right? I understand.
I've heard that from the dog meat traders. You mean, right?
Yeah, because it's very challenging. Like you said, the trucks, the interception of the trucks. That's
the ideal way. But
that's the ideal way. But my guest from China, she told me that is almost impossible to do now because you know why? They get paid by the dog meat trader, and they will actually put the activists in at the police station because they're saying you could cause an accident. You're an endangerment to public roads, and so it's all like corrupt. It's huge corruption. So, yeah. Anyways,
that's important. I know. I mean, that's really a struggle. Because sometimes it might make sense to, in some situations to pay to rescue a dog, but then you're fueling the.
I have huge compassion, and I always put myself in that person's shoes. If I was in China and I was about to see a dog being slaughtered, and the only way I can save him is to pay for him, I would probably do it. That's the honest truth.
Yeah, I know. It's hard. It's really hard to judge, and we all know what we want to happen, and that is for this trade to shut down so that there's no dogs to buy.
Let's hope one day. And South Korea may be the next one.
I think that'll be, the first of any country. I think it will be that one. I hope it happens sooner rather than later, but but I don't know. We get our hopes up a lot and then are disappointed. So I'm trying not to.
But China has now 3 cities that have banned the consumption and slaughter of dogs and cats. So
3 now?
Oh. Yeah, and it was Shenzhen first, and then Zhuhai quickly followed, and then it was Leishi. So 3 cities, that's huge. Yeah. And I think in Cambodia we've seen some entire cities ban dog meat. So slowly but surely.
India too. Well, that's getting some pushback.
In Cambodia?
In India, sorry.
In India.
In India, there's a ban, but then there's it's we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, it's just we need to be unfortunately patient. Something I'm not very good at.
I know.
Thank you so much, Nina, for being on the show. It really means so much to me because I really do follow your actions and I've seen the successes you've had. And I think I would encourage viewers to go visit your website, donate, sign a petition, and support this great lady that is out to save the animals. And so we can all get behind that. So thank you, Nina.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for being a voice for the animals and doing what you do.
We're going to keep on working on it, and hopefully we'll have that beautiful, compassionate world sooner than later.
That's right.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye.